Hello, everybody, and welcome to Set the Westworld on Fire. I'm Ryan Shepard. With me today, I've got Cy.
What's up, people?
And we're here to tear Westworld to pieces. We're on...
Figuratively, not literally.
Well, I don't know. It depends. I might get it on DVD and just rip it apart.
Well, there you go, man. There you go.
Maybe
but I know we definitely won't be setting it on fire.
I might.
Unless of course, the last episode stinks, then we will be.
Maybe. We'll see. I'll have to decide once it comes and how much it costs.
Oh, but all this negativity, man. I mean, that's not really how we feel about the show. Just to even though it's alluding to that right now.
Not at this point, anyway. We'll see how it goes. So this particular episode 4, was called Dissonance Theory, which has a interesting connotation. So cognitive dissonance is something to do with having I'm just going to read the definition right here: the state of having inconsistent thoughts, beliefs, or attitudes, especially as relating to the behavioral decisions and attitude change. So that's a pretty good wrap up of what's going on with Dolores and Maeve and some of the other characters in Westworld. They're kind of coming face to face with what their actual real reality is, and it's very, very confusing to them. And
I think, Ryan, it's fair not only to say that for the host, but also for the guest and the other human characters as well. I think it applies both ways in a cosmic sense.
It certainly does. There's definitely some confusion going on behind the scenes at Westworld, as well as some of the guests that are interacting with them are I feel like some of them are seeing some of the weirdness that's going on as well. So this particular episode, as with all the other episodes, it opens with Bernard and Dolores having a conversation, and that pretty much leads to more indications of Dolores kind of spiraling into her madness, so to speak. And she's, as this is happening, she's like slowly becoming more and more conscious of where she is and who she is, and she really doesn't understand it. She isn't understanding these two worlds colliding, basically.
Yes, but Ryan, I would argue, is it really madness or is it an awakening?
Well, I mean,
or can there be very little difference between the two?
Yeah, I think right now it seems to be coming out as madness. I mean, when you have an awakening, sometimes you're a little confused, and then eventually I think she's going to be able to pull it together and figure out exactly what's going on, in the same way that, we'll get to this in a little while, Maeve is kind of putting that together. So Dolores is still traveling with William and Logan, and they're continuing on their bandit hunt quest kind of thing going on.
It's a bounty hunt, Ryan. A bounty hunt.
Yeah. And at one point, they go to the same town that the Man in Black and Lawrence kind of had their little... the Man in Black killed Lawrence's wife and a bunch of his friends and cousins and family and stuff like that. This was in episode 2, I believe. And Lawrence's daughter is still there, and she's still... It's a little strange that she's still kind of in the same kind of like malaise that she was in when the Man in Black basically broke her and got her to tell him the next step on his puzzle quest here. And Dolores and her, they have a conversation, and Dolores has a flashback to some scenes that we're not really familiar with. It's at a church. There's like gravestones and things like that. We're not really sure what that is signifying, if that's some sort of past experience or something she may be seeing in the future. And it kind of goes hand in hand with, like, when you get two of these malfunctioning robots together, they seem to get worse when they're actually within close proximity to each other.
Right. The virus becomes more dominant, if you want to put it in more simpler terms to understand.
Yeah, that's what it seems like is going on, because we saw this earlier with Dolores speaking to Maeve, and then Maeve obviously going down her route of spiraling out of control.
Mm-hmm.
So their story concludes with them capturing a bandit, connected with what Logan says is a very good quest line. I'm using the term quest line because it's they keep referring to it as a game. He even refers to this as finding an Easter egg, which is all references to like gaming and going on a quest and interacting with NPCs, which are the hosts and things like that. So they decide. Well, I guess deciding is a little air quotes there. So Logan kind of like coaxes William to quote unquote put on the black hat and go down his quest line instead of going down William's quest line of just kind of being the good Samaritan, the good guy on the bandit hunt or something like that.
Come to the dark side, my son.
Pretty much. And that's how that quest line. That's how that story wraps up in this episode. And yeah, I think that what we're building up to here is William is definitely the good guy, and the Man in Black appears to be like, I think there's going to be a showdown between them. Like there's going to be a William versus the Man in Black at some point in this storyline, where William being the good guy and the Man in Black being the bad guy. That's what I think is we're leading up to with that storyline anyway.
Right. Well, it's kind of like a role-playing game, Ryan. I mean, William is trying to make the choices that are more noble and more valor, or more of value, and the Man in Black and even Logan is starting to make choices that show, I don't know, word it however you want, a renegade choices, negative choices, the dark side, so to speak, if you really want to put it in those terms.
He'd have the devil horns on his head right now, and William would have the halo.
I would say, I would say so. I mean, you could say that even though it's technically a world of sin, but I guess you can make that connotation, Brian.
So one of the other main storylines here is, of course, the Man in Black. He's back. We missed him all last episode, but he's back in full force in this one. And him and Lawrence, they meet up with Armistice, who's a bandit woman with a snake tattoo across her back and on her face. She's part of the bandit gang that rides into Sweetwater and steals the safe from the whorehouse. We saw that in the first episode. And I'm not sure if we've seen bits and pieces of it in other episodes. We may have, but this is part of a storyline that happens periodically in Westworld. And she happens to be the next piece of the Man in Black's puzzle. The Man in Black asks her he needs to know about where her tattoos came from. This information was given to the Man in Black by Lawrence's daughter, which we talked about earlier. And he's put the pieces together and figured out that she's the one that holds the information he needs.
But of course, Ryan, nothing in this world comes without a price. As we see, is this the case for the Man in Black and Armistice, excuse me.
Sure. And the Man in Black kind of gives her a spiel about honoring Arnold's legacy. So we're bringing Arnold back into this. I think this is the first time the Man in Black has mentioned Arnold. This was the first time. So now we know the Man in Black knows about Arnold. He's one of very few people that seem to. Ford and Bernard maybe are the only other two besides the Man in Black. So it's interesting to find out how the Man in Black knows about Arnold. And
we get Oh, I'm sorry, Ryan. Go ahead.
Yep. And he's saying that he's doing this in a way to honor his legacy, whatever that ends up meaning. One important thing that we find out about the Man in Black is that he seems to be the head of some sort of foundation that maybe help with charity causes or something like that in the real world outside of Westworld. Some guests that are with the bandit group mention that to him.
But that was a mistake because you never want to break the game, and the Man in Black made that evidently clear, Ryan.
Yes, he basically said, if you talk to me about that again, I will kill you. He refers to it as being on vacation.
But of course, Ryan, can a guest kill another guest in that show?
I don't know. We haven't found that out yet.
I don't believe so, Ryan, because then again, I think that would be counteractive, and I'm surprised that other guest didn't realize that or didn't just call his bluff, so to speak.
Well, I mean, we are talking about the Man in Black here, so
that's true.
It's very possible that he can kill people, but maybe the regular people, regular guests can't.
Or perhaps Ryan, when they get out of the game, maybe he'll be the one going to kill them.
Maybe. So this leads to Armistice asking the Man in Black to help them break out Hector Escaton, Hector Escaton, who's basically the leader of the bandit gang. You saw him, like I was referencing earlier in the first episode, leading the bandit attack into the town of Sweetwater. And basically Lawrence and the Man in Black go in. Lawrence is going to be shot with a firing squad to be executed, but the Man in Black has a couple of exploding cigars that he uses to escape the prison with Hector.
Seems like kind of in video game terms, Ryan, it seems almost like a cheat.
Yeah,
how he's able to escape so
easily.
It
was interesting to see that play out, because there was this whole bit where the people in control of Westworld were like, "Hey, we have a request for some pyrotechnics," and Stubbs, as he always does, approves of whatever the Man in Black requests, and just like the cigar explodes, opening up the jail cell, and then he gave another one to a marshal, who it blows up in his face. Pretty.
Yeah, which I actually really enjoyed, Ryan. I mean, you didn't expect the old exploding cigar trick.
Yep.
Or at least as literally as that.
Yeah, and I mean, this particular scene, there's not too many lighthearted scenes, but I would say that this is about as lighthearted as it gets. That particular part of it, and then when the firing squad is going to open up on Lawrence, you just see this close-up of Lawrence's face and him like clutching his face real tight as the bullets go off, and then it turns out that the Man in Black and Hector are shooting all of the gunmen, as opposed to Lawrence getting shot himself. Lawrence seems to be the next to Teddy, the comic relief, in terms of being the butt of the jokes and everything like that.
Yeah, you just never expect it, because Lawrence has been, we came to Lawrence being a condemned man, and now it just seems like he's not. I mean, at least if he was condemned, he would be doomed to die. But in this case, his pain just seems to be going over and over again.
Yeah.
I mean, him and Teddy are very synonymous, I would say.
Yeah, they seem to be filling that same role of like the sidekick that just keeps getting like second string.
Nordberg. Yeah, the Nordberg.
The second string character that never gets his moment, so to speak. Oh,
no. He gets his moments. He just doesn't get the ones we think about.
Yeah.
He gets the short end of the short end of the stick each time, Ryan.
He's the guy that gets shot on the toilet.
Pretty much.
So for this, all I put in our little notes here for this is that Teresa and Ford have a very interesting conversation. So Teresa has to go and talk to Ford about this ambiguous board that she keeps referring to, that she thinks is pulling the strings and controls like what Ford can do and what Westworld can do. And Ford kind of lays it down on the line in very matter-of-fact terms that that's not actually how it works, and that Ford very much is in control, and really all Teresa is there for is more or less a figurehead to communicate between him and the board everything that Ford is going to do. It's a very tense scene, and up until this point, I've been pretty vocal on my, kind of meh on Anthony Hopkins. Like, he's not bad in this show, but he hasn't really had a moment, and this is certainly his moment. And the tension in that scene and the way that it contrasted with almost everything else that had been in the show was quite startling, in my opinion.
No, you're absolutely right, Ryan. This is when we see Robert Ford, played by Anthony Hopkins, at his most vicious. He's basically telling this woman, who we found to be a pretty powerful figure, at least in the administration part of Westworld, that essentially she's nothing, or she's next to nothing, and that Ford displays this messiah type, not just persona, but role over Westworld and over Westworld and his creation and all of the staff. So, and Anthony Hopkins does such a good job at threatening people in the most intelligent but the most quiet way, and it's just completely sinister, Ryan. I mean, this is something that Anthony Hopkins hit the ball out of the park, so to speak. It was an incredible moving performance by him at that point. I mean, it was just intense.
Yeah, this was the first time that you saw that side of Ford, like who he really is. You had kind of allusions to it, but you really weren't sure if like he had been that and maybe he's stepping away from it, or he like is riding the line between it. But this is definitely the point where you understand that Robert Ford thinks he's a god, and that, you know, Westworld, and not only just the hosts, but the employees and the guests are more or less his subjects.
They are, no, oh no, absolutely. And again, Ryan, I've alluded this before, how in the beginning I did say that, you know, this guy thinks he's a god. This guy thinks he's some sort of mad scientist, a John Hammond type. But this time, we really got to see the full-on effect for who Ford really was, and who we knew who he was, or at least that's how I saw it.
Yeah, I think he's definitely a step way far ahead of whatever John Hammond was. John Hammond was at least a little bit.
He's like the mad scientist evil version of John Hammond. That's what I was getting at.
I'd say it's probably more like, I don't know, it's been a while since I've read this, more probably like a Dr. Moreau kind of vibe I'm getting from him.
Yeah, but he ain't Marlon Brando. Let's just put it that way.
No. Yeah, so that was like, that's definitely one of my favorite scenes so far in this whole show, in this whole series. And like it ends with like this, which was a little weird. Even watching it the second time, it was still a little weird. Like this machine coming in and going to destroy the area that they were in. Like, so the whole framing was that Ford took Teresa to this place where she remembered coming when she was a little girl, her first visit to Westworld. And, that was obviously Ford's intention, to show her that he can not only bring her back to this place, but also take it away from her.
Not to mention, Ryan, he also knows more about people than we thought, because he even knows about Bernard and Teresa's affair, which really shocked her. So it just shows how she's probably not just overseeing the host. He's overseeing all of the employees. So this is the scene where we know that and again, we suspected this, but now we know that Ford is that has that smart antagonistic behavior, that he will always be one step ahead of the competition, mm-hmm. and that he can see everything coming. So
yep. And this was also at this point where I'm going to add a little bit of a theory I have working on, and which is that I actually think that Robert Ford and Arnold are the same person, and that Arnold was like almost like a multiple personality kind of thing. And at this point, Ford has taken over as the primary personality, but Arnold may still be in there in some capacity. Just the way that he's referred to in like just such strange terms, especially by Ford. Like, I don't know, no last name, no any more information other than precisely what Ford has been delivering to whoever he talks to about Arnold. That's just my theory going forward. I don't really have too much of an explanation for it. Same thing as my theory last week with that Bernard was a host. It's just a feeling I had when I watched that particular scene.
Okay. All right, Ryan. I mean, that's fair. For me, I don't know if I can say or if I can fully agree with that. I mean, I think it's an interesting theory. Do not misinterpret me, but I don't think I'm going to go on and say that I don't believe that theory will be I believe that theory will be proven incorrect. I do think that that Arnold is somewhere in there, perhaps in some sort of subconscious, but I'm not going to go as far as to say who that is, whether I alluded it could be the Man in Black, but I actually think I think that Arnold is still somewhere in there and that he isn't truly dead, but I'm not going to go as far as to say that Ford and Arnold are the same person. I believe Arnold was someone very close to Ford. I believe that Arnold very well could be alive, but I can't go that far with your theory. I hope you prove me wrong, because that would be a hell of a theory. But again, I just can't. I just don't see it.
Okay. Yeah, we'll see how it goes. We'll see what happens next episode and farther on down the road.
Absolutely. We will, Ryan.
All right. So I had some microphone issues, so excuse the little bit of lower audio quality going on here for a little while, but we're just going to wrap this up real quick anyway. So the final section of this episode continues Maeve's storyline, where she's still having flashbacks to when she awoke while being serviced and repaired in episode 2. She is reminded of the men in their hazmat suits by seeing a Native American's doll that resembles them, which was the first time we had seen a symbol like this. And these kinds of things, when I see them in this show, it's really hard for me to know whether or not this is all part of the plan, so to speak, like all part of the storyline and stuff like that. Like if there is somebody behind the scenes pulling strings, like if it's Ford or somebody, or if this is just something that, this doll just happens to kind of look like a guy in a hazmat suit. It's really hard for me to tell at this point. Did you have any thoughts of that when you saw that particular scene, Si?
How do I say this? I think that in regards to that scene, Ryan, I think it was very similar, but again, we would have to connect that Maeve is now beginning to show signs of further infection, and that now now that she's having flashbacks of the men in biohazmat suits and how she sees the Native American and now with the Native Americans, I think she's seeing this as I think she's now starting to interpret this in a way that's reminiscent of the real world, because then at one point you had I think it was Rodrigo, correct? Or, no, Hector, excuse me, that stated that that doll was from Native American folklore. Yeah. Ironic. So, I mean, again, you could find the connection that way, but whether or not that's what she figured out at first, or at least initially, we don't know. But what we do know is that there's now she's definitely making a connection, and that she's done so in the past, because she keeps drawing these pictures, she hides them under the floorboard, and she found her other copies, so she knows that something's going on. Mm-hmm. Whether or not she keeps reaching the same conclusion day after day, a la Groundhog Day style, I can't say.
Mm-hmm. So the episode ends with the bandit attack that we had mentioned before on Sweetwater, and Maeve corners Hector in the room with the safe and makes him basically cut her stomach with his large knife in order to. She's kind of like asking him questions about the Native American thing and what the significance is, because he's been living with the Native Americans and has some knowledge in that, and she thinks he'll be able to help her. And then he wraps around to her wanting to stab her in the stomach, where she had the bullet wound before, where that was being worked on in the hospital area during episode 2. And once that happens, they actually end up fishing out the bullet that they never ended up taking out of her. So this connects the story, these flashbacks that she's having, to reality. Like, this is actually something that's happening to her. It's not a dream. It's not a vision or something like that. She now has the proof that, this is more than just something she's dreaming up or something like that.
No, exactly, Ryan. We're now seeing what seems to me, Ryan, to be a much more evolved form of consciousness, and she seems to be evolving much faster than Dolores is.
Yeah, much faster.
Which I find maybe it's because she's a newer model. Maybe Dolores is going gradually based on her programming, and Maeve, maybe if she's a more advanced model, that she's getting it much more quicker.
That's definitely a possibility. Maeve just seems to be accepting it and putting it together a lot faster than Dolores is. And it may be simply because maybe Maeve has more hard evidence, like she has the bullet, she has these things that she can make hardline connections to, where Dolores is kind of like just keeps going back and forth. Like there isn't any, like, Bernard doesn't come directly out and tell her that she's a robot or something like that. He keeps he's letting her go down that path and trying to figure it out herself, but he also isn't really helping her along in any way. Just trying to make it seem like it's all normal or something like that. So that may be why Dolores is having a harder time, but it's probably because she's an older model and Maeve is maybe more advanced in her thinking and stuff like that.
Quite possibly.
So now we have these two hosts that are like pretty far along figuring out there's something going on. So the plot thickens, as you'd put it.
It certainly does, Ryan. I mean, and what did you think about that ending? I mean, what do you think Maeve is going to happen to Maeve? Is she going to remember these events or have more flashbacks until it finally starts crashing? I mean, to me, this seems just like, a hard restart on a computer. But how far until that memory crashes and they start and they become and they become disabled? Or could the exact opposite happen and they'll achieve sentience? That seems to be my two thoughts right now.
Yeah, it's going to be hard. One of the things that I keep thinking back about is why Maeve is even still in service with the malfunctions and all the weird stuff that went down. It just seems like they pulled Dolores's father a lot quicker than they are Maeve, and it just doesn't. I don't know. It just doesn't make sense to me. I don't know if it can be written up as a plot hole, or maybe there is some reasoning behind it. I don't really understand why Maeve is still out there and able to able to malfunction like that.
Well, Ryan, I think there's definitely a reasoning behind it. I think that Ford may have or Bernard acting on Ford's orders may have had something to do with that. I believe she was intentionally placed back there. And again, I think Ford knows the answers.
Yeah,
or has.
Like I said, I'm just not sure yet where that stands. It's one of those questions, and I'm like, with how secure they are and how careful they are, you think they would have just pulled Maeve in and let it go, like replaced her or something like that. But we'll see. This was kind of in my opinion, had some highs and lows. This wasn't. It had some really high highs, specifically with Ford and Teresa, and the final scene with Hector and Maeve. But I don't know. Some of the middle stuff didn't really do it for me as much as some of the other episodes did, like the bounty hunt and some of the stuff with the Man in Black. It just, I don't know, just something about it didn't really feel as heavy, and I'm not really sure. Just didn't feel as
hard hitting.
Yeah, I guess so. Maybe. It just felt like more like, oh, it's some shootouts, yay. It wasn't really, more like pomp and circumstance rather than actually pushing the story forward, which up until this point, I think the show has been almost 100% like pushing the story forward.
Definitely, Ryan. And again, you need to have you need to let things evolve slowly, like what Westworld is doing or what Westworld is trying to capitalize on.
Yeah.
Again, they're waiting for they give you the visual rewards now, but for the story rewards, you have to be patient.
Mm-hmm.
And again, there's nothing wrong with that. It still makes for damn good television, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
And I think that there's still going to be a big payoff.
Yeah, I mean, it's either going, at this point in my mind, it's either going to go down as like one of the best well-written series of TV, or it's going to completely all fall apart. It's going to end up like Lost or something like that, where they just can't wrap it up at the end, and it doesn't really have a satisfying conclusion. But we'll see.
Well, that's where you and I differ on Lost, Ryan, but we won't go there.
Okay. But that's why we're here. We're here to give you the straight facts, what we think about it, how we feel about it, where we think it's going, and hopefully you enjoy what you're listening to here. If you do, drop us a comment, give us a like, subscribe, let us know what you think, your thoughts, your theories, your wild expectations of where Westworld is going, because that's what we do here on Set the Westworld on Fire. We set the Westworld on fire.
Your voice matters to us, people. So please share it with us and other viewers. And if you don't like what we say, well, you can go fuck yourselves.
Absolutely. Just like in Westworld.
That's right.
All right. We're going to leave it off with a yeehaw.
Yippee-ki-yay.
Woo! Get along, little doggy.